Got outside plant headaches? Question mark. That's the name of this one. I'm Jason down there at the bottom, Director of Customer Support. I think my title changes all the time. I guess it depends on what I'm doing at the time, but my email's down there too, and our website. If you got questions or want to see videos, get more information, that's a good source. You're welcome to email me. You can email sales@graphicalnetworks.com or give us a call, send us a letter, postcard, however you want to reach out to us. If you have questions, we're happy to obviously talk to you, answer questions, and see if we might be the right fit for what you do. We make a software product called NetTerrain. Company's graphical networks. NetTerrain's the product. And we hopefully have some pain medication for the outside plant headache issue. So let's move on. Page 2. I don't have much in the way of PowerPoints, so I pretty much will hit up a demo here in a second. So we'll do a quick poll question and then overview, poll question, and then demo. So just spend like 2 minutes on this thing. So, oh, I don't have any poll questions this time. Look at that. So we don't have to worry about the poll questions. Looks like I don't have any today. So manage your outside inside plant connections, track outages, manage fiber strands, trace circuits, fully decommission cable, and more. So what I'm going to show you, and I'll just jump into it, is the NetTerrain product, specifically geared towards outside plants. So NetTerrain, if you haven't seen it, is it's primarily a web-based tool. You would log in as a user and get access to the system. We offer a SaaS platform. We also offer where you can install it in your environment. We have a lot of customers that, the majority, in fact, probably 80%, that manage and host their own instance of NetTerrain, which is fine. It's Windows-based, so you need a Windows Server and SQL Server database, and they can be on VMs or separate machines or the same machine, pretty much any configuration you can think of and want. But with respect to outside plant or cabling, the headaches, so to speak, I think, what most people run into is they're tracking a lot of cables and strands, and it's usually in something like, let's say Excel. I mean, you might have it in other tools, but my interaction with folks has primarily been something like Excel, where you sort of outgrow that. It just becomes a bit of a trouble to maintain and update. And there's usually very few people that can understand it, how it was set up and configured. And it's usually like one person that really maintains it and knows everything about it. So it's a little hard when that person isn't around, or of course vacations, or when they retire and sort of move on. So it's nice to have it in a central location that everybody can technically get to if you give them access. And our tool is set up where if you do the outside plant, you can use the OpenStreetMap integration, which is why you see this map here. It allows me to zoom in, and it builds more and more detail, right? Builds you those different areas in the map and gives you detail down to street level. So what are people doing with it? Well, doing things like outside plant, but it's usually buildings, manholes, handholds, pits, etc. And then tracking things like the conduits or ducts, and seeing how those relationships sort of play out. I have some customers that are very much tracking strands, cables, through the manholes or handholds, building to building, but they don't necessarily have splice points. So all the cables really kind of run building to building. And then I have others that are doing a lot of splicing, where they may run a cable into a manhole, and then that connects up, with a junction box of some sort, where you basically have a splicing tray, and you splice things together, maybe to another cable or 2 other cables or 10 or whatever it is. So that's kind of what we're here to do. Not logged in. Let me log into this, see if I can get logged in. Close this one. Close this. All right. So it's physical, DMV. Okay. So I'll zoom in a bit. So how is this built? Well, you can build it by simply dragging and dropping objects from a catalog. I want to bring a building in and position it and place it and that sort of thing. And then I can bring in cables and connections. There's shortcuts for these things. Control C, Control L do connections. There's interfaces, GUI things to help you do multiple connections at once. I'll talk about some of those things in a second. There's also, you can import data, CSV import, so Excel import, basically of multiple objects at one time, build your hierarchy. So all the things you see here, if I zoom in a bit more, see a building with data and connections. Whoa. Sorry, I'm using my tricky mouse today. Conduit. So I could add these buildings, position them with Latin long, show connectivity between them. It just goes on, and I can do that with Excel. Sort of build my whole project, but you don't have to. Again, you can use the GUI or Excel. You can also do things like discovery, and there's just a lot of options for bringing data into a tool like, NetTerrain, right? So it becomes more a thing where you need to say or see or decide what it is you're doing, right? So if you want to track cables and strands, well, that's kind of what you want to do. We're pretty good at that. I mean, if you only have a couple cables and strands, I don't know, NetTerrain might be a bit of overkill for you, but if you have a lot and you want to, grab all those things, you certainly can. So we're a hierarchical tool, so you can start at a high level and drill your way down into sort of more and more detail, where you see things like again, buildings, floors, rooms, cabinets, and so on. Right? So, which is all great. I'm going to go back up though to my mobile, and something like a manhole you might show, because you want to see not just the manhole in position, where is that manhole? This one's kind of big, obviously. It's, a couple buildings big, but you can shrink it down to be street size. Double click and see like a butterfly. Again, see devices like the CommScope. See the CommScope and the cards. See the splice points, right? And so on. So, and the devices are in the catalog, and you can really sort of have any number of devices you like. In this, you're actually seeing, cables, cables coming through and connecting like between manholes. So this is manhole. If I double click that, it takes me to its device. So this is MHTT, and I can go back to where I was before. If I go up a level, you'll see where I am on street level, the street level map, MHPT1. And then if I go in, I'm inside MHPT1. These are not devices inside this manhole. These are actually connections from this manhole out. So here's a cable that goes from basically this manhole to MHTT. So this device connects to two different devices, this device, and actually this device, so there's three. I can tell that because there's a reference node. It's got a little yellow triangle. I can actually turn those off. So this is what's really in the manhole. All right. But I can turn on the what we call inter-diagram connections to see all the equipment that's in the manhole. And so you're establishing these connections across these different points, building to building, building to manhole, so you can see a full path of, in this case, conduits, how they connect to those manholes, right? Now, these conduits, you're allowed to see not just, you have a conduit, but you may also see things like the strand total that's in that conduit, how many cables. So 2 cables, 50% capacity. So I probably have one 12 strand or one 24 strand. So bundled links would tell me what cables actually associated with that particular conduit, which in this case is an SM24. So single mode 24 strand. I can see where that cable is too by clicking on it and seeing the endpoint connection of that cable. This cable has one container, so it's only in one part of a conduit. And I can see that by going to its interface and seeing that this is the conduit that particular cable's in. You can have a cable that's in multiple conduits, might be in 10, 20 segments, but this allows you to see that. So when I select the cable, cables for us can be individual sort of connection points, or they can be cables that create or show strands, like strand interface. So for instance, I have a cable here on the left-hand side. I can click on it and it shows me the interface for that cable. And it shows me whether or not the strands themselves are connected. In this case, none of these strands have been connected yet. So it shows me the color of the buffer tube, the strand color. If I click on the interface, I can then connect the strands to devices. These are the hierarchy of the devices. So this is the interface for the individual strands for that particular cable that I've attached between a device and some other location. It's usually device to device. This allows you to select things like status, and you control what those drop-down lists are. So status for us is like, you know, you have a cable, it's got a bad strand, you can mark it as bad. So people obviously don't use that strand. Or unknown, you know, maybe don't know what the status of it is. Or, you know, it's active or reserved. You can flag those strands for a specific thing, you know, if it's reserved or whatever. And then mode, if you want a single or a multi, and again, the mode themselves, you can actually create your own set of modes too and add those to this drop-down list. The name of the strand, if you want to name your strands, you can override this. You can have columns. There's a whole nother status column, right? Or circuit information. That's if I assign this to a circuit path. I'll talk about circuits in just a second, but a lot of this is configurable and you can change it and, you know, so on. So you can see that this particular cable is coming between a patch panel in a cabinet in this hierarchy, and it connects back to this device, which if I double click will go to the patch panel that's actually in a different cabinet, but in a different building too. It's in JH. So zoom back out. So it's nice to be able to navigate and see, you know, where these connections are. I mean, that's of course part of documentation. Now, this is technically getting into inside plant because we're grabbing the cables, we're bringing them in, we're actually showing the devices rack mounted. You certainly don't have to do that. You could terminate your cables directly into, instead of going all the way down to a data center or something or a wiring closet, you may just have it at some level like just in the building itself, and all of the things you see here, you don't even have, you know, literally just leave out the floors and other things and just bring in a device where you terminate the cable to. That's totally up to you. Again, we don't force you into some hierarchy or some predefined way of doing things. You know, the tool itself is pretty flexible and robust and so on. So when you do set up information in your project, multiple points, connections, cables, strands, conduit, etc., then you can start to define basically paths. So for instance, if I want to connect MT2 to US40, I can go up to tools and look at circuits and have it calculate a path, right? In this case, it said, oh, there is no path, which is fine. It's telling you, hey, I've got no path between these two. Now, you might look at that and go, well, wait a minute, but there is. You can follow a path. Well, that's true, but we're looking for cables and strands that would define the path for us, right? So it's a true path, right? It's a true connections between basically 2 points. So if I come over here and I look at something like Canton, and I'll try NS. I can't remember the two that I normally use, but we'll check it out. There you go. So we go 4 hops, right? And I can open that up and actually see what cable it's using and what strand it's picking. I can override those strands, which is great. But this circuit is defining a circuit path between 2 points, and then it's going to reserve or take those strands out of the system and use them for this circuit. So they're not going to get used again in some other circuit or process path. So then I can walk through and create, the circuit path and have it reserve that information. And basically that looks like this. If I go over to full circuit list, I have a couple circuits defined, right? I have paths and number of hops. And if I want to see, so for instance, number 6 here, it tells me exactly from device and to device. So that's the whole path. From here to here is the circuit path. And it gives me information, the name of the circuit, a category, and so on. These are just columns of data. I can overwrite those. But if I click on CLR, it should show me the circuit path visually. So I get to see the circuit path. So for instance, starting NS, ending BR. I started NS. This is the device. Can't really see that. Let me zoom in. This is device. This is what it connects to. This is the strand it's using. This is the other strand that it's using, 2 strands. And then it connects here, MH East. And I can see, again, connections between them. So if I zoom out, MH East is actually a manhole. So this is in the manhole. And then Greektown, of course, the building. And MH Boston, and then BR. So all of these are showing me the path, the physical connections. I can click on any of these and see them. So if I want to click on this guy here and actually see that port, I can double click and drill down and see what it is. That's in the manhole, so it's probably, some cross connect or some patch panel. I can see it by going up a level and actually seeing the device. And I misquoted myself saying that was a manhole. I was wrong. I was picking a building there, not a manhole. So you're seeing those interim or those connections and the path. It's actually a building. Sorry, manhole. So you can see the connectivity and how it works and how it shows you that full physical path, right? And all these things you can click on. So what we're really trying to do is give you the ability to, on a map, define the path, true physical path of your, the infrastructure you're using to represent your strands, right? Your cables and strands and so on, if you need to show that level of detail. So hopefully getting you out of the Excel spreadsheet syndrome of putting the data in. Now, some people may use Excel and it's perfectly fine and they have a great process around it. That's great. Then you probably don't need a tool like ours. You would, stick with that and just keep that up to date. But if you are looking for something more visual to track those strands and so on, this is a good way to go. So anyway, that's what I wanted to cover. I just want to see, if there's any questions out there, let me know. There's a Q&A and a section I think you can click on and load that up. My polls are up. I'm gonna start this poll, launch this poll. It says, what do you currently use for documenting the outside plan? I'm gonna launch that, let you guys answer. And in addition, if you do have questions, go down to where I think there's a little hand or something you can press, and that allows you to ask questions. So Google Earth, yeah, we get Google Earth. By the way, we can do Google Earth import, those KMZ, KML files. So if you are using Google Earth and you want to switch over because you may not be getting everything out of it that you want, because Google Earth is great for maps, but it's a little limited when you're doing the OSP, especially for larger projects. It gets a little cumbersome, kind of like Excel, but great product for sure. I really enjoy using it. It's fun to zoom in and out of different areas. So if you want to try answering those polling questions, Google Earth seems to be the winner right now, and not spreadsheets. So, all right, I'll end that one. And then there was a second polling question. So I'm going to go up and do that one too while we're doing polling question. What's your biggest OSP headache? Tracking connections, tracing outages, managing fiber strands, tracking both outside and inside, or other. I guess we should have had an all of the above too. Although maybe you can select multiples. I don't know. I don't know about this one. Oh, I didn't launch it. Sorry. Jeez. You're not going to see it, I guess, until I press the button. Outages. Yeah. So I didn't show the CLR, but you can generate the circuit layout record, which shows you the full physical path between 2 points, across strands and so on. Maybe I can generate that outside and inside and tracing outages. There's a little of everything for everybody. It's always nice to kind of see what people are interested in. Outages, that's a good one. Oh, well, I did show you the CLR. I'm sorry. I started to do the block CLR, which shows you the full physical path of the circuit. Let me resume my share here and go back to this block CLR. What I was talking about here was this is the full physical. This is a physical path of, starting at some device and what does it connect to? What does it port connect to? And what does that connect to? And then and so on, right? We can also see what we call the swim lane CLR, which is more of a, it's also physical path. It's just a different kind of view. I like them both. I like the block and this. This one shows hierarchy. So device, card, device, and that's inside this cabinet. And this port and this device is inside this cabinet, but they're connected together. It's two different devices in the same cabinet, same, room, same building, so on. So just showing you physical path again, just a different type of view. So anywho, let me see if there's any question. What maps are you using? OpenStreetMap is what we use currently. Actually, that's the one we support. Haven't gone down the path of Google and those types of things. Usually there's a licensing thing. We're trying to make it so people don't have to worry about licensing maps or adding to the cost. And OpenStreetMap's nice to OpenStreetMap. The maps, it says how often are the maps updated? As often as OpenStreetMaps is updated. I mean, it's a pretty well-known product. Lots of companies use it. It's sort of like a Wikipedia kind of thing for maps where people update it themselves. You can actually update a map. So if you were at a campus university or something and you had a new building going in and it wasn't in the map, you could actually add it, which is really cool. You can't do that with Google. So you don't have to wait for anybody. You just go in there and update it yourself. And the maps are actually pretty good. I find certainly, big populated areas are usually pretty well established. Places that are more rural, I find that those are the ones usually maybe missing an object here and there. So those are the ones a little more apt to not have quite everything defined. But I find the ones, cities and stuff are usually pretty good. Can you provide a way to see available fiber strands between two buildings? You definitely can, because you can go into the interface and actually see a cable and all its strands by seeing the strand interface. So for instance, let me share my screen again. Share. So if we go look at a particular cable, the thing is, when you say between two buildings, the circuit will definitely tell you if you have strands between buildings, because that's its whole purpose, is allow you to do the algorithm and actually see those strands. So like when I was doing I think it was Canton to Greektown, and I went up and said tools, circuits, create new circuit. This is showing you whether or not you have a cable with free strands available between those 2 points. Now that might be a home run cable from here to here, or it might involve 2 cables, right? Which in this case it does, because this is MH to Foster. So this is actually cable between here and here, and then there's a cable between here and here with strands. And this is showing you the strands that are available. Once, when we say available, we're talking about strands that are not flagged to not be used by ACRA, which you can do. So if you had a bad strand, you could mark it and say, hey, don't include this. Or if it's already part of a circuit, a defined circuit, like when I was showing that CLR, that was a defined circuit. Those strands are in use, so they're not going to be available in this interface, this as capacity. So anyway, going back to questions. One price for everyone. So the pricing is based on objects. So it depends on how you're licensing it. Do you want SaaS or do you want on-prem? If you do, I'll share screen again. If we go here and we go to, and move this out of the way, and we go to netterrain.com, this is a SaaS offering. So you can go in and sign up, 14-day trial, put in your credit card, pay, monthly fee, and it tells you 1 user, 250 objects, 5 users, 20, or, give us a call. So with the SaaS, it's kind of defined by here, you get 1 user and 250 objects. When you're hosting it yourself, the pricing is kind of similar, not exactly like this, but you host it yourself. It's actually a little cheaper, I think. And I think you can get unlimited users, typically editors and read only. But you can, when you talk to sales, you can kind of tailor it how you need it or want it. So it depends on your budgets and stuff. But typically when it's on-prem, you get unlimited users and a certain number of devices, objects. But when you do the SaaS, it's a little more limited, but still, it's a good price. So anyway. Yeah. So do you offer an on-premise license or just cloud? Both. We offer on-prem and cloud. Yeah, never mind. No problem. So if there's no more questions, you guys are welcome to ask more. But you can always call us or email us. Happy to help out with any questions you have. I know licensing is always one of those things. We're pretty flexible on certain things in licensing, object counts. And you want to make sure you know what an object is for us. Basically, it's anything you drag from the catalog, like a rack, a device, a node object, like a building or a floor or a room. But we don't license for subcomponents. We don't license for links like cables and strands and all that. That's not really part of the licensing right now. So if you, if you have questions, just let us know. We'll tell you what pretty much the exact cost and what to expect. I mean, we're pretty easy. We're not like forceful salespeople. We're trying to sell you a car when you walk through the door. Let me get my manager, see what we can work out for you. So now we're I don't know. I think we're pretty laid back about that stuff. We want to make sure it's the right fit more than selling you something. So anyway, great. If you guys, stop my share. If you guys have questions or whatever, just let us know. If not, I mean, we may not be the right fit. So there's lots of other tools out there. You certainly want to look and make sure you get the one that's really best for you and your environment and your personnel. Great talking with you. I've got talk to you later. Thanks. Stay safe.